Indeed. As you can tell, we're also recording this session and we'll be using it to as a bit of standing content for people that want to get introduced to the topic. But today we're going to be discussing buyer-led, how to become buyer-led in sales execution. And the team here at Joint Flows is going to walk through our point of view on this. We've done a lot of work on this in the last probably 3, 4, 5 months. I suppose you could argue it's been at the heart of the business since we started, but certainly the last couple of months we've really been investing time, energy, and effort into understanding this particular problem. And today we're really happy to share with you guys, our thesis, our thinking, a number of the different tools that we've created and our approach to this. Quick introduction. I know a few people on this call anyway, but I'm Stuart Barker. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at Joint Flows. As Mick alluded to a few minutes ago, I was actually a prospect to this organization. I saw the technology and realized how important it was and what potential it had to change the way that sales is executed. And then when the offer came to join the team, I was really happy to do so. I'm going to be hosting today and driving the conversation, but our subject matter experts are Hitesh, who I'll call into the conversation.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Hitesh. I'm one of the co-founders of Joint Flows. I had the pleasure or displeasure, depending on how you see it, of working with Mick for many years when we realized we had a problem that was felt across multiple sectors. And that was the basis of why Joint Flows was born.
Thank you. And has been alluded to, the grist of our mill, the glue that holds us all together, is our CEO, Mick, who also is on the call and will be speaking today. So, Mick, quick introduction to yourself and then just a few minutes on the company, please, as well.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Thank you, Stu. Yeah, my name is Mick. I'm the CEO and founder of Joint Flows. So I've had the pleasure of working with Hitesh for many, many years. We've been in the trenches together. I met him in a company called Yieldify, marketing technology company, and that's where we already started to feel the pain of orchestration, alignment, buyer-led processes. We're really understanding where the deals were and how to forecast them. We turned around and looked for solutions that could help us better project manage. If I can give a little bit of a spoiler alert here, those deals, those projects to completions, and we were always sent back to the likes of HubSpot or Salesforce, which weren't fit for purpose when you've got a very large buying committee on the other side you're trying to manage, times the number of deals, times the number of regions. Things get super messy. And then I was able to join Tom in a company called Outreach, where I think the magnitude of the problem was exponentially bigger, being across multiple regions and being dependent on resources essentially that were on the west coast of the US as well as Central Europe and so on and so forth. The results was deal slippage, different level of magnitude there as well, but consistent deal slippage, which was really hard to forecast. And yeah, quite a lot of difficulty to manage the reps in order to get them to work and put their best foot forward on each and every single opportunity we were working on.
And as a result, a company is born.
Yes, and that's the villain origin story of Joint Flows, essentially. How can we align to a buyer-led process and then deliver still a really good sales process at scale whilst maintaining forecasting accuracy?
Okay, brilliant. There's one more face on the call from Joint Flows, which is Reese. Reese, just a quick hello from you as well.
For sure. Not going to try and follow all that experience, but yeah, I'm Reese. I'm the founding SDR here. I've been here for the last 5 months. It's been a whirlwind, but it's been awesome. Obviously, being amongst you guys, and obviously there's loads to learn. So yeah.
So
Cheers, Stu.
for those of you on the call, Reese will follow up. For those of you not on the call, Reese will still follow up. Don't worry, so we'll go from there. Right, we promised though today a conversation about how to run buyer-led sales processes. And before we dive into our point of view on how that actually comes to pass, I wanted to call Hitesh back into the conversation. So Hitesh, obviously, as our Chief Revenue, you're the tip of the spear when it comes to our outreach and engagement with customers. And you spend your working life with sales leaders, sales directors, VP of sales, more broadly, perhaps some success leaders as well, but let's kind of focus for the moment on sales outcomes. Just from your perspective and what you're seeing in the market, why is it important to run buyer-led sales process? Like, why should we care about this?
It's a good question. So we know that companies are hurting out there. There's a lot of people missing targets. There's a lot of deal slippage. There's a lot of all of this going on. And I think people are looking at the answer as being, let's become buyer-led, because if we can become more buyer-led, we can become more predictable. We can drive more conversions. We can reduce sales cycles. But the reality is what we're actually seeing is although people want to be buyer-led, they're still actually forcing people through a selling process. And the reason behind that is the notion of becoming buyer-led is kind of tied in with relinquishing control, and people don't want to give up control.
So let's start with a bit of definition. I think you've done a good job of kind of setting the scene there. Sales process, buyer-led process, like what's the difference between the two? Like how would you sort of say when someone is being truly buyer-led?
Yeah, so if we take a step back and think about two companies that sit within the same ICP, what we actually know is that there's still going to be nuances in the way they buy. No two buying processes are the same. If no two buying processes are the same, then the selling process can't be the same either. So the way you get somebody through from discovery through to close one, even if you sit within the same ICP, cannot be the same because you have different things you need to validate from company to company.
So sounds all very logical, sounds all very straightforward. Is it not happening? That's the first thing to establish.
No, I wouldn't say it is happening, right? And the results tell us this as well. So I think we've got a slide which speaks to some of those results as well at some point. But you can see, 79% of sales orgs are missing monthly targets. Everyone's missing quota. And we also know that buyers, actually 43% of them would rather not speak to sales either, right? All of this comes together to create real issues. And then when you think about how it is this has been addressed, actually the way people are managing deals are still very single-threaded. So if you think about it, on average, there's 6 to 10 buyers within a buying committee, but most people are trying to get from that point of discovery through to close one with one individual champion. And that's not going to allow you to be able to get to where you need to get to because there's going to be a lot of requirements that are not met.
Okay, so we've got sales individuals in the market that are still locked into this is my process, I follow my process.
Yeah.
You've got them working with a champion. I mean, champions are still important, right? Even in a buyer-led deal.
Yeah.
But they're working with a champion and they're kind of hanging their hat on that individual and hoping everything's going to be okay. How is this? I mean, what is then happening? The symptom of this disease is then what when it comes to sales performance and sales outcomes? We can see people missing their targets, but what is
Yeah.
wrong when you sort of work through a single thread in a very sort of sales-led engagement?
Yeah. Well, you're missing key milestones, aren't you? So if you actually think about what a selling process is, it's an agreement that your prospect has a challenge that they, and once you've reached that agreement, then it's about understanding what evidence that prospect needs to see in order to determine that you're the correct solution for them. Now, none of that is happening. And as a result, it means people are obviously missing targets, like we said, but it means there's no predictability either. And it means there's lots of blind spots within your deals. Now, you do have some people who are still able to successfully hit target, but actually they're doing that outside of your systems. And if you're doing it outside of your systems, it's not scalable. And if it's not scalable, does it mean you can't share best practices? And as an organization, you don't have the ability to be predictable either.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the word evidence, and this is something which is very close to my heart. I'd like to dwell a little bit on evidence before we sort of move too far forward. So
Yeah.
you said there in a really sort of succinct way, buyers need evidence that this is a good idea. Could you just expand on how you're using that in a commercial process? Like, how are you seeking and providing evidence?
Yeah. So evidence can fall into a vast amount of different categories, right? It might be we need to see the evidence that you're a good fit from us from a solution perspective. It might be from a technical perspective. So, hey, do you play within my existing ecosystem? Do you integrate with my existing technologies? Because the last thing I want is people in my organization to go into other tools. And it could be financially, right? Like if I invest £1 in your organization, what do I get back? Do I get the return on investment that I require to see? And so that evidence, although it could mainly sit in these buckets, varies from company to company. So that ROI that's required, as an example, could be based on net present value for one company, but it can just be based on, hey, I just need a 10x on my money from another company. So you
Right.
need to understand the nuances between what's required.
So what I'm hearing there is that the exam question to get the deal changes in every single opportunity that you're navigating, right? And that the way in which they need to be persuaded is slightly different and slightly nuanced. And that's the essence of being buyer-led. And it's fair, I think, that a lot of the people we deal with in joint flows, sales leaders, they're not getting that consistently. They're not getting that kind of outcome consistently. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is fair. And I think when you're not able to do that consistently as well, it means that you have reps who are spending a lot of time on deals that are not real either. So it also has an impact on the qualification capability of your organization. Are you qualifying deals appropriately to understand that, yes, I should be spending time on this deal or not? I mean, we've all been there ourselves, and we've also managed teams where we have sellers who are doing this, but they spend a disproportionate amount of time on deals that are not actually there to be won. And that's because it's not been qualified properly. And if you're building this around evidence, then you can get to that point a lot quicker.
Okay. All right. So the more visually acute of some of you will have probably noticed I skipped a few slides. I'm going to return back to one more. On jointflows.com, you will find a load of information that we're going to be talking through and about today, including a piece of work we did called the Deal Progression Framework. And the Deal Progression Framework is actually our first attempt to codify the use of evidence in a modern sales process to drive the outcomes that you need. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about in the next few minutes is going to be referencing back to this notion of deal progression and evidence and everything that goes from there. But we promised in this webinar that we would give you a way to run and win buyer-led sales engagements. So Hitesh, let's share with the good people at home the joint flows approach or our thinking when it comes to being truly buyer-led. Can you talk us through what you think good looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because when we speak about this topic, we speak on it based on a lot of evidence points now from people who use the platform as well. So I think we're in a position where we understand the notion of good is the way in which you manage your deal, but not did you do X, Y, and Z, if that makes sense. So if we take one step back, I'm going to be a little bit repetitive here, but I think it makes sense to do so in this instance, is what are you trying to achieve over here? Well, what you want to actually do is you want the selling process to meet the buying process, because where these two meet, this is where the magic actually happens, right? You need a selling process and a buying process to meet. Now, what are you trying to achieve in that? As I said earlier on, it's the agreement that there's a challenge your prospect is trying to face and that you're a potential solution for it. And after that, it's the understanding of what evidence is going to be required in order to satisfy the requirements your prospect has.
That's
So the first,
right?
say again.
That specific prospect, that individual prospect.
Exactly, that individual prospect. Going back to what I said before, no two companies buy the same, right? Everyone has a unique buying process. You could sit in the same ICP, even if it's a 20 to 30% nuance, that's still going to have a profound impact on your ability to close that business or not. So the first thing you do is you need to capture the buying criteria. And as I alluded to earlier on, this could sit across a vast amount of different categories. It could be financial, it could be technological, it could be legal, it could be usability. There's a number of things, but in the first instance, you want to be able to understand, all right, what is it that prospect A needs to see in order to make an evaluation here to determine if I am a good fit for them or not. So that's the first step.
And so far, right, this is nestled nicely within things like Medic, where you're trying to expose buying criteria, right? So there's buying criteria. So specific, are you documenting this criteria at this point in time?
Absolutely, always. Everything needs to be documented because what you'll see at the end is what you want is for everything to also then be signed off by the correct member of the buying committee. I needed to see X. I agree. I have now seen it. Tick. Right. So everything should be documented.
Okay, so on screen, we've got a number of these different buying criteria that we've put together here, right? So I need to see 75% improvement in EBITDA. This has to work with the existing ERP. I need to be able to automate a returns process. Team needs to be able to use it straight out of the blocks, no training overhead. And I need to be secure and compliant, right? So we've captured these requirements. What then do we have to do?
The next thing you then need to do is you need to start to map this to the correct member of the buying committee as well. And that's crucially important because you could deliver a business case to your champion, but actually that might not align with what it is that CFO needs to see, right? Also, the requirements of each of these stakeholders is going to be specific in terms of how it is they want to be able to see this evidence. I need to do a business case. It needs to go to the CFO. I need to validate the ERP integration. That needs to go to my director of technology. Always understand, what the requirement is, what the evidence point is that they're looking for, but who is it that needs to see that? And that's the next part.
Yeah, this was the most profound learning for me, was that against every buying criteria, someone in the buying organization decides whether you are right or wrong. So when I say I need to work with ERP, there's only one person that gets to define what that statement means, right? And it may not be your champion. It may be the director of technology. It may be the director of operations that says, no, 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 no. For me, that statement of this has to be working. My bar is here, and this is what I absolutely need to get to. And that was the biggest learning for me in really sort of adopting this buyer-centric mindset, was finding the people that sign off on the exam question. Otherwise you're just producing evidence that isn't good enough for anyone. Like the evidence doesn't meet the requirement of the individual that's ultimately making the decision behind it. This was a profound learning for me. All right, so
Absolutely.
we've mapped our buying conditions. We've acknowledged here as an example that our ERP, the phrase is how to work with our existing ERP, that will be governed by our director of operations in this instance. What then do you need to do in order to become and lead a buyer-centric process?
So then the third part you need to do is actually understand the process which you're going to go through to deliver the evidence that's required. Now, typically you do this with your champion and the member of the buying committee as well. And I think what you said earlier, Stu, is relevant here, is validating the ERP integration from your director of technology at one company could be different to another company, right? And so the way in which you go through the process of validating the evidence points needs to be thoughtful. It needs to ensure it aligns with exactly what it is they need to see. And once again, that's going to vary from company to company, to stakeholder to stakeholder. So it's not something to be rushed. The job of a seller is to be a detective. It's always to ask the right questions, to always try to understand what it is your prospect needs to see. And so that line of questioning doesn't stop. If you understand what the buying criteria is and you've mapped it to the buying committee, you now need to understand, okay, how is it that we're going to go about delivering against this now?
Okay. Now, again, I want to double down on this point because this was a really big learning for me, and I think we're talking about it here, so let's really clear it. There are two things we want to do here as a result: is get the evidence they need to see, but also agree on the methodology of creating the evidence, right? The process that creates the evidence. And I think both of those are equally important. Have I got that right? That it's as important to display to the buying officer how you will achieve the evidence as it is to present the evidence to them. Could you talk a little bit
Absolutely.
through that, just to kind of make that really clear for the group?
Yeah, I think the key point here is you shouldn't assume a one size fits all. And that's why it's important that you're going to show and agree on what that process needs to be, right? So if we look at a business case as an example, or actually let's look at the ERP integration as an example, maybe it's going to require a deep dive demo as the process. And then after that, they're going to require a reference call from an existing customer who has the same setup as them to validate this requirement. Whereas on another company, it's going to be different. Maybe actually just doing the integration workshop is going to be sufficient, right? So the process becomes really important because it's not blanket, it's not one size fits all.
Okay, so to recap, buyer criteria are captured. We then navigate to the person that gets to decide on what the bar is for the evidence they need, right? So I'm the person that decides what good looks like when it comes to integration. I'm the person that decides what good looks like when it comes to a business case. We then arrive at the evidence they need to see, but then more importantly, we then agree with them, we're going to get you this evidence, and the way we're going to do this is by, number one, an innovation workshop and a reference call, or in a separate opportunity, a sandbox POC, or in another opportunity, hey, Hitesh, I've used your platform before, I don't need any persuading, but could you arrange a reference call with a colleague of mine, right? Whatever it's needed to clear the bar in that particular instance is what needs to be captured.
Absolutely.
Okay, and again, documentation, talk me through how you're creating documentation around this.
Or everything should be documented, right? What is your requirement? How are we going to deliver against it? And then as we proceed through the slide, you'll see, have we actually delivered against it and has it been signed off?
Okay.
But yeah, documentation is important throughout this whole process. You want your buying committee to almost have a pack that says, yeah, we've gone through this process. They've understood all of our requirements. They've delivered against it, and this is how they delivered against it.
Yeah, I mean, that's super important, right? So if the buyer can look at it and go, wow, they really have been thorough. Right, that's a great thing. Okay, so you've created the processes, you now documented the processes, and you've agreed this is what we're going to do to surface the evidence. I'm sure now you actually have to get on and do the work. Is that the next layer here?
Well, this is where you earn the big bucks, as they say, because this is actually the hardest part. It's the alignment, it's the orchestration, it's the project management. And I know it's kind of a sweeping statement from my experience. It's quite true, which is that most sellers inherently are not good project managers, right? You hear about these sellers who've got the
I'll wear
gift of the
that hat.
gab. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think to a degree, I'm also the same. Luckily now we have joint flows. Nobody
Yeah.
needs to be this way anymore. But this is where you need to be able to align. It means alignment and orchestration internally. So make sure you can orchestrate all of your resources, people, and activity around the evidence that you need to display to your prospect. You need to do the same for your buying committee as well. And then all of this then internally needs to feed through your systems as well, because ultimately you need to be able to forecast as well, right?
Forecast
As any
accurately.
revenue leader knows, yeah, you can manage your deal well. And if you're doing it in this way, actually, it does mean as a byproduct of that, your forecasting also becomes extremely accurate as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And then at the end of that, you've created the evidence. The evidence has been created through an agreed process of certain rigor and quality. That process was originated by the person responsible for saying what good looks like against the buying criteria, and then hopefully you get your deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, everything should then be signed off, right? Mr. CFO, this was your criteria. This is how I went about delivering it. Here's the evidence. Do you agree this criteria has been met?
Okay.
Now,
So
when you get to this, sorry, God,
go
Stu, you
on.
carry on.
No,
No, I
please.
was going to say once you get to this point, you've essentially done what you set out to do, which is align your selling and buying processes. Because as we've come to understand, that's where the magic happens. That's where you've got a deal.
Okay. So everything on the screen here looks really logical. This is a very clear articulation and one I particularly enjoy, but everything here, seems pretty straightforward, pretty logical when you look at it. We've highlighted step number 4, which is project manage and align. In your experience, why is this the toughest thing to do? Like, why is that the one that we're calling out for particular attention here on this slide?
I think, I mean, the first thing is inherently most sellers don't have the skill set to be able to do that, right? They are working on multiple deals usually at the same time. It's difficult to understand where you need to focus your attention. And usually it's more of an emotional decision in terms of where you're going to focus your decision versus something that's more data driven like this. That's the first thing. The second thing is the tooling that most organizations use to manage deals
Yeah.
isn't fit for purpose. It doesn't give you the ability to be able to tick these boxes, to be able to create alignment both internally and externally.
All right, Hits, thank you so much for that introduction. So we've kept our
You're very
promise.
welcome.
We've provided a framework here for buyer-led deals execution, sales execution. It's all very simple. I expect all of you can rush away right now and take action on this immediately. But I'm going to call in Mick, who might help us understand why this very straightforward, very simple, very logical thing is actually quite hard to execute. Mick, what's the problem? Why is it that, in your experience, every organization isn't just natively delivering buyer-led processes?
I would say two things. I would say a know-how and a tooling issue. And I think they're both interconnected. But I think that over the years, we've learned to shape the know-how around the tooling. And the
Yeah.
tooling is just simply not fit for purpose. So if you look at around you and you look at anything that you've got accessible from a technological point of view, I want you to tell me what's older than 25 years old. Your laptop isn't. Your sunglasses aren't. Your glasses aren't either. Your screen isn't 25 years old. Nothing you're actually using on a day-to-day basis you rely on is that age. Yeah, the very system you're using to run your entire business, essentially your pipeline, your sales pipeline that tells you how much money is in play, how much money can come out, how much money you've lost, and what you're looking at in terms of booking over the next few fiscal period, has been created in 1999. I don't know if Chris was born in 1999. Chris, were you?
Yes, I was.
For a few, well, you could barely read at this age. But you see my point. Like we're still operating like we were 25 years ago. And everyone's starting to wondering, why is the result not following up with the technology? Is because the systems that we're using is obsolete, and the problem starts exactly with what you got on the screen. The problem starts with the pipeline funnel, the sales funnel, that
And
thing that you've created for yourself.
is this a problem of technology or a problem of mindset and execution? Like so how does this problem express itself?
The training that you're providing your reps when they start is shaped on the funnel that you've created, which is stage 1, we're going to run discovery. Stage 2, we're going to run demo. Stage 3, we're going to go to a pricing call. The training that you're providing to your first line manager is exactly the same. Or when he enters stage 1, then this has a forecasting value of X percentage point. When he enters stage 3, we need exit criteria in order to come out of stage 3 and enter stage 4. And you set the requirements and the expectation that the business runs like this. But if the business runs like this, then your sales cycles also run like that. But the buyers don't buy like this. So there's a big mischief between what the buyer is going through when they buy tech. And we're speaking about SaaS here today, but it's the same with professional services, it's the same with consulting, and what you're actually tracking and operating around. So on the left-hand side, you've got a piece of content that has been created by Gartner, which is the modern B2B buying journey. And on the right-hand side, you see what you're looking at when you're trying those journeys. And you can see that it just doesn't add up. Those two worlds have nothing in common. One is completely unstructured, long with a high level of complexity, multi-streams of activities in parallel, overlapping, intersecting. And the other one is a really clean, neat 5-stage process to the $1 million target that you've given your reps. And when you question where the deals are, you're forcing the reps to give you a lie. You're forcing the reps to tell you that the deal is sitting at stage 3 out of 5, and therefore that's a 60% win rate out of that process. When you're asking your buyer if they're sitting in stage 3 out of 5, the buyer they don't understand this vocabulary. They don't understand this notion of stages. What they're looking at is, I've got a problem which I need to fix by a specific date. Otherwise, there's an implication to that problem. That's to your point, to that MedPeak framework is very well suited for pain discovery and qualification. And then as Hitz was saying, for me to fix that problem, I've got solution requirements, technical requirements, and financial requirements. Now, the more you can provide evidence to these requirements, the more comfortable I am pursuing that relationship with you and getting into a contractual agreement. But these requirements don't come in that specific order. In fact, they come in gradually in any order in which you're discovering them. So that very logical funnel doesn't make sense. And then if you're using the data that the funnel provides you with to forecast, then yeah, as the data suggests, you can't forecast beyond the 30 days window, like a 30-day rolling window, which essentially is how much deals have you got illegal?
Yeah.
And therefore that's the number I'm going to commit to.
Yeah, I think again, sort of the insights I've collected as we've been doing this thinking, I've led and participated in really well-structured sales organizations. Every single one of them trains reps on a linear process because the linear process is the thing that's written down in Salesforce. But all of the best reps are navigating the complex biocentric world that Hitesh, beautifully explained, right? With some semblance of that process. That's their reality. But, from a mindset perspective, the organization is training, is talking, is implementing and building around a linear funnel that everyone knows doesn't exist. And I find it fascinating that the emperor's clothes have not been pointed at, it's pointed at missing, right? It feels illogical at this point in time.
The symptom is very obvious, and almost 100% of sales leaders we're speaking to are complaining about data quality and veracity in their CRM platform. They don't trust it. I don't trust the data that my reps have put into that platform. I don't trust the stages that the reps have said these opportunities were sitting within. And therefore, I'm putting an operating rhythm around the funnel constraint to understand what's actually happening within the deal. So weekly deal reviews, weekly pipeline reviews, deal coaching, and so on and so forth, so that they can actually drill into the exact status of the deal to understand, okay, are we multi-threaded? Have we got an exec alignment? Have we got etc.? Like all these things you can't capture in a funnel. So the reason why they're not putting the data into the system to start with, or they don't do it anymore, is because the data is irrelevant. It doesn't give them any more information to themselves, and it doesn't give the real representation of the deal to the leadership, and they get grilled if they actually play the game, right? If they're playing the game of deciding which stage this opportunity sit in, and you're asking the question, well, how many people are you selling to within the buying committee? I've got 5 buyers with conversations in simultaneously. They all sit at different stages. You can't decide which one takes over in terms of how you reflect that into the system. So they lie. You're forcing them to lie to you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the repercussions of this, and let's kind of start to consider the before and after, because, and again, I just want to recap what we've talked about so far. Hitesh showed us a really straightforward, well thought out, structured framework for delivering a buy-led experience. One that we, through our experience as joint flows, working with sales leaders all the time, know is rarely reflected in the reality of the day-to-day work of AEs and sales leaders and first-time managers. And you've now pointed to this fundamental tension and issue between effectively a legacy way of executing, which is built around sales funnels. And with all of our sales thinking, processed around the sales funnel, what are the implications of this? Like, what does it stop from happening? And if we could get rid of the funnel, what would sort of change?
You're losing deals by forcing them into your single-minded track. And deals are made when buyers have peace of mind in executing an order. And for that, they go through multiple requirements. So when you look at the funnel and you look at what is preventing you from seeing, you've got 6 very obvious blind spots. The first one is they're built linearly. So it's a top-down where the expectation is that the deal will never move back up the funnel. You've got win rates at deal stage, and you've got stage duration within each stage as well. If you move the deal back up the funnel, then the win rate breaks, which means that the forecasting you get out of the funnel also breaks. So one direction versus a very multi-directional buying journey. That's the first mismatch. The second mismatch, and I will put a disclaimer here, if you've got a very transactional purchase cycle with very few buyers involved, 1 or 2, your funnel is probably enough, right? You go from one stage to the next, there's not many overlap, not a high level of complexity. You're fine, right? Don't use joint flows. As soon as you've got a buying committee, you have overlapping activities, you've got overlapping threads that you need to manage in parallel. But the funnel only track one buyer, right? You can only have one opportunity in a single stage at a time. Guess what? You've got between 6 and 27 buyers in mid-market plus enterprise buying processes. You have to choose which one takes precedence. Which one are you going to reflect in your CRM? Is it the first one? Is it your champion? Is it the last one? Because I can guarantee you that the longer you stay into that buying process, the more senior stakeholder you're going to catch, and the earlier on in the funnel they will land. We've got, and we are quite SMB, right? We've got deals where we've got a buyer at pricing, a buyer at legal, and we're starting all over again with a third buyer with demos. This opportunity should sit within 3 stages at a time, which you can't do in Salesforce and HubSpot. You allow deal to be in only 1 stage at a time, as we're saying. Gartner's got stats on this. It's not us saying it. Every buyer will require you to move the deal backward. If you've got multi-buyers involved in the same buying committee, your opportunity sits everywhere in the funnel at the same time, quite literally. You can't reuse the same stage multiple times. You can't do demo pricing, demo pricing, demo pricing. Yet your deals are doing demo pricing, demo pricing, demo pricing, demo technical, demo technical, demo technical, right? Because you de-risk based on the stakeholders that are getting involved when the stakeholders are getting involved. If you could start with the entire buying committee in one go, then easy, right? You just progress them all at the same time. But it's not the case. Like, you just expand your reach as you go through the deal, discovering more and more requirements. The last two are the worst ones for me. Stage nuancing. A demo, whether you run it with your CFO, with your buyer's CFO, or your buyer's champion, has the same win rate. If you're doing a
40% demo, right? 40% I'm at demo, 40% I'm going to win this deal.
yeah, crazy. How can you not nuance the stages? In what world running a demo with an SMB account versus running a demo with an enterprise account at C-level has the same stakes? It doesn't add up, right? And the last one, which I think kind of the nail, how do you say, last nail in the, all right, is every single deal will run through the exact same funnel, especially if you're in Salesforce. You have one funnel for new logo. You may have another one for customer success account management. But if you take new logo, you've got your SMB deals running the exact same track as your enterprise deals. You've got your inbound deals running the exact same track as your outbound deals. You've got your referral deals running the exact same track as the competitive campaign that you've just run. And you've got the same deals. You've got the same structure to follow those deals, which makes no sense whatsoever. Like, by definition, the value of the funnel is obsolete. It's just redundant.
Yeah. So let's look at the impact of these, and I'd like to look at this through 3 levels. So impact for the chief rev, impact for a first line manager, impact for the AE itself. You've talked a lot about kind of the constraints of the system. Let's understand what these means to things like coaching, forecasting, winning, supporting, like how does it impact then on the day-to-day of the outcomes of these teams? So why don't you start with those personas any way you want?
Yeah, so CRO, they can't forecast, which is one thing. Really, they've got a cap on win rate. They can't win more. They don't have enough visibility to increase performance. Forecasting is a byproduct of control and visibility. They've reached a ceiling in terms of how much control they've got through their funnel and how much visibility they get from the funnel. You're dead. The CRO's lifetime duration in a SaaS company is 19 months old. It's about 19 months total. Right? Not even a sales cycle. First line manager, they can't coach, they can't forecast upwards, they can't unlock deals downwards. The only thing they've
stay on that, can't coach. They can't coach what they can't see, right?
Yeah, like if when we are doing a before and after using join flows, we calculate that the first line manager have visibility on about 7% of the deal's activities, which essentially is the stages in Salesforce, right? Because the other 93% happens outside or in parallel or within or overlapped with everything else, which you can't capture. So they don't know what to do, and you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna revert to creating more pipeline, which because it's easy. It's just a numbers game versus a skill set game.
Yeah. Okay. And then for the AE, just frustration.
Well, yes, I mean, 75% missed target, so it's frustration under performance. But you've got AEs that are extremely performant. Like 20% of the AEs will drive 80% of the numbers. And if you ask the question and you say, okay, what's the common pattern between these AEs versus the rest, is tenure. Like, most of the time is 10 years. They've been in that business for longer. They've got more experience of running and project managing deals to completion. They know how to align resources, they know how to find it, etc., etc. They don't play the funnel game. But most people are, as Hitesh was saying, most reps are not. They're more on the art than the science. Like, sales has become science, and you need the scientific approach to it, which is not a funnel.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's again do this little recap. We've got a buyer framework which we believe in, which is logical and straightforward, but actually it requires sellers to be really good at managing multiple stakeholders, surfacing multiple mini kind of projects that arrive at evidence that they need to feel good about a deal. And that requires a huge level of project management capability, which actually some sellers are lacking. We then compound that problem by immersing them in a culture and a technology environment which is built around this linear funnel, single track deal management process, which we all know to be unrealistic and have nothing to do with reality. And as a result of this, we're unable to properly capture the deal in detail in our systems, which makes coaching, leading, training, forecasting almost an impossibility. Pretty fair?
Yeah, I would say Gong is successful because of this. Gong is successful because there is no messenger between the reps and the forecasts. You don't trust me, listen to the calls, right? The data is there for you. Just go query the transcript. And I think that tells you quite a lot about the state of affairs in sales.
Yeah. Which is you need a policeman to actually report on what was said, right? Yeah, got it. Okay, Mick, what have we done about it? And I'm going to give you a slide to kind of talk to. So Joint Flows, operating system for sales. Can you give us a summary and then get a little demo ready for a few minutes just to show people what we're about?
Yeah, you're managing timelines, you're managing assets, you're managing stakeholders, priority, context on every given opportunity you've got to make a contractual outcome with your buyers. Doing this is project management, literally. The project managers manage timelines, priority, assets, stakeholders, context, and so on and so forth. There is no project management tool on the market for revenue teams. Today, we're speaking about new logo, but the same applies to onboarding, account management, customer success, support. Like the entirety of the revenue chain requires more and more project management. So what have we done? We've created an operating system. You've got your system of records, your CRM, which for the last 25 years, we tried to turn into a system of execution, a system of action. And it does not work because it's built on a funnel. The rest of sales tech extrapolate that funnel data.
Yeah.
To generalize. Obviously, there's going to be a few that don't, but mostly they use the funnel. And if they don't use the funnel, they create their own funnel, which has the same limitations and the same shallow level benefits you can get. We've not done that. What we've done is we've created something called the composable sales funnel, which essentially turns every sales opportunity into its own project, into its own modulable funnel, which means that you can go beyond and you can operate without being limited to the funnel constraints. You can run deals which sit at multi-stages at the same time. We don't capture that. We capture the complexity of the buying journey. Not stage 2 and 4, not stage 5 and 6, right? You can run multi-threaded streams really easily. It's just like you would play Lego. You just bring them together. I'll show you later. And what it does something unique. It brings the ownership back to the buyer to guide you to the next evidence.
Yeah.
And we see that every time. Like when we're on a deal, I often don't have the time to follow up with the client. I get followed up with straight from the demo because I don't force them into anything. I'm just telling them, you're going to have 3 things you need to de-risk again: the solution fit, the technical fit, and the financial fit. You know how you operate. Tell me what I need to do. And then
exactly. You know what the answer, you know the exam question. Let me sit it, right? And I'll come up with it. Okay, really cool. So look, a pitch is worth 1,000 words. So why don't you log into a demo account? I'll give you a few minutes to gather your thoughts. While you're doing that, I will just point to a few resources that we've got for people to enjoy, which I should have done at the top of the call. And then Mick, I'll hand over to you in just 1 second's time. So Yeah, on jointflows.com, you'll find a couple of assets which I think could be really interesting. Number one is I'll work on the composable funnel. So this is the ability to, as Mick's about to show you, compartmentalize deals and create unique representations of every deal in the technology. And then the deal progression framework, which is the notion of empowering buyers to lead you through the sales process. Both on jointflows.com, have a look at them. It's there for you to sort of chew over. We welcome any kind of feedback you might want to give to us, but it's these frameworks, this composable funnel and deal progression framework, which is powering our technology. And I'll hand over to Mick just for a quick 5 minute scoot around our platform so you can see that we can walk the talk. All yours, Mick.
All right. I don't know what you're seeing.
If you click on a tab that says Mix Screen, and I think we now have you in full view.
Awesome. So JoinFlows is built into your CRM. If you're using HubSpot, Dynamics, or Salesforce, it's here to essentially provide the project management skill set sales reps don't have, and you can't wait for them to be 50 years old until they get it, right? So you need to be able to upload project management skills into their brain right from the get-go. You go ahead and you say, okay, I've got a deal which I'm trying to close with a company called Yieldify. I'm going to import that deal and I'm going to choose a playbook, right? The playbooks take you from A to B as quickly as possible. It's not a funnel. It's based on the segment, the outcome, the nuance of the prospect you're trying to bring to the next stage. It can be an inbound deal. It can be an RFP, can be a mid-market sales process. You also see support cases, SDR, ABM outreach is built to be aligned with the buying requirements you typically see in such segment. So for here, I'm going to use the SaaS enterprise sales process, which is new logo, and I'm going to press create. Sorry, I've got someone on the chat trying to speak, I think.
So
Okay.
this what we're going to see is the start of a 10, right? So right now we're still sales led. This is our, if you don't tell us anything, we'll execute in this way.
Yeah. What happens right here, you've got the entirety of the project built on the timeline. It's pre-assigned to the right stakeholders, so Bob, who's running that deal, is not going to need to spend hours trying to get hold of deal desk. They're not going to try and bring context through notes in Salesforce. These people are pre-invited to the deal so that they've got the context needed for them to be as quickly operational as possible when it's their time to play. This can be bricked into any which order you want, but it also allows you to build in the buying requirements on the fly. Stu, what do you need to do next? Well, now I've seen your first 5 minutes demo. I'm going to need to involve my CRO to a demo so that we can speak about his metrics specifically. This is great. Let me bring the workflow I've got around demo. So you can see here, those workflows are pre-built. I've got generic, I've got persona specific, I've got post-pitch, I've got pre-pitch, I've got demo workflows. So I'm going to do this one on the persona specific. And I'm going to say, okay, this is demo to Stu's CRO. And when do we need to do this, Stu? Well,
yeah, after we've done pricing.
the pricing. All right, cool.
Because I know he'll want to know what the pricing is before we get there.
Done. So it's now in the plan. You've got a demo to Stu's CRO. So what's happening next is I can personalize this specific journey and create the composable funnel. At the moment, you see that it's all subsequent tasks, right? I can only do this when I've done that done. I've got this one done. But I can start creating a separate stream of activity if I ask you, okay, well, is it worth involving your technical team as well? Like, do we need to do a technical sign-off workshop? Yeah, absolutely. When do we need to do that? Well, I think we should do it at the same time as my second demo. Right. I've added it to the timelines. And now I've got another stream of activity I can quite easily follow. I can also detach some of those activities to say, okay, well, I can run this in parallel, therefore I don't need to have them linked. And the plan evolves accordingly. Now, the magic is here. As soon as I start completing a task, I'm going to make some progress. And the progress is not, I've reached stage 1 because I've done my first discovery demo, my first discovery call on the 4 box tick. My progress is made based on the complexity of your buying process and what I think is going to be next steps versus use, which I can also build into that plan. I've covered 10% of your buying journey. And as we're going through more and more requirements, which I'm also capturing dynamically through join flows through the use of transcript, I can also understand whether I'm multi-threading, if the number of people I've got on your side grows at the same pace as a closed-won deal versus a closed-loss deal. Like, where am I pacing versus good deals and bad deals? Am I progressing at the same pace as a closed-won deal versus a closed-loss deal? And am I discovering your buying requirement at the same pace as a closed-won opportunity or a closed-loss opportunity? And then you can adjust instantly. You can start building additional flows. So if I want to detach the technical discovery call, then I can stop the condition between those two milestones, which means I can start running them in parallel as well and bring the timelines forward.
So we talked about evidence earlier, Mick. Where does the evidence element come into this? How do you reflect evidence back to the prospect?
Yeah, so we capture all of this in real time, and then this opens a mutual action plan, which is built essentially in real time. So you can see here, this is an interface that you can share with your buyers. On the left-hand side, you got the timelines that we've pre-agreed on, which I can modify. So if I can add now the demo to Stu's CRO to the timelines, you will see it's automatically appeared in the mutual action plan, and I can go ahead and assign that to the right stakeholders, which means that I'm starting to capture hidden buyers, hidden decision makers. And then as we go along, all these elements in terms of problem statement, executive summaries are prompt generated. So on the fly, I'm able to capture a requirement, document it. If I've already delivered evidence of that requirement, document the evidence as well, and then ask for approval. Is this enough, or do we need to do more? Mick, we need to do more. What do we need to do? Well, actually, I've got a really complex one, which is I need to do an integration workshop to my ERP. Well, this is great. We're going to do it after the deliver demo. Boom. Now, I've not just added one workflow, I've added a set of workflow built together. You can see here, I've got a mini playbook launched, and you can see everyone is pre-assigned to that workflow internally. Join flows captures and calibrate the level of complexity of the flows and milestones in that specific playbook. So if other projects are also using the playbook, then I'm comparing like for like. I'm not comparing enterprise versus SMB, inbound versus outbound. I'm comparing within the same segment. And based on how fast things are moving, then the predicted close date updates as well. So if I archive that, then things will start going forward.
All right, Mick, thank you so much for giving us a little tour here. The importance of this is just to illustrate that we can walk the talk. I've seen there's a few comments there. Yeah, Dominic, absolutely, you share this with customers. It's a big part of our value proposition. So let's just recap on a few things that we talked about today just before we sign off. And if I get to a chance, I'm going to share my screen in a second or two. But we had a lead-in from Hitesh that talked to us about the complexity in the market and the fact that people are really struggling to hit the outcomes they need. And then actually being buyer-led is a big part of understanding this, right? Really getting under skin of buyer requirements. But if you're going to do that, you have to own the buyer requirement. And that means you've got to be project managers, right? You have to run multiple threads of engagement across the buying committee to surface the evidence that they need to feel good about making the transaction. That needs to be documented. That documentation needs to share. And then really what we've done as Joint Flows now is to try and create a platform that captures all of those essences, right? The essence of deal progression through evidence, the essence of the composable funnel that builds unique sales processes in every single time. So we're really thrilled to have you there, to have you here with us today. What next? Well, if we may be so bold, we would propose, I don't know if you can see my screen, I hope you can. We would propose that you should book a meeting with us. We'll take you through a workshop where we understand what your buyer-led sales process might look like, right? And that's the first thing that we're happy to do. But really the takeaways from today are think more about evidence and stakeholders, right? The real secret to being buyer-led is to engage the people that set the exam question, get them to give you the exam question, and then provide all the evidence to that exam question that you can to them in a way that they accept. And then our last little takeaway today on how to be much more buyer-led, help your sellers invest in their own project management capabilities, right? So being charming and a good vocabulary is no longer going to cut the mustard. My God, I wish it was. I'd be a much richer man if that's all that was needed nowadays. But you've got to start now to think about structured ways of assisting these AEs in managing multiple stakeholders and complex deal committees. All right, I'm going to give the final word over to our founder, Mick. Mick, thanks for taking us through that. Hitesh, thank you very much for your comment as well. Anything from you before we close the call, other than to say thank you to our joiners?
Yeah, I would just say buyer-led is easier than seller-led, because you're just helping people move through their buying criteria with absolute peace of mind. There's no forcing, there's no assumption being made, there's no tricking. It's really about, what do you need to see? Have I shown you what you needed to see? Is there anything else you need to see? Can we deliver that? And that brings everyone on the same wavelength. Like there's no internal politics, there's no gaming the forecast, there's no trying to squeeze in a last deal through a discount. Is value based, is value centric, and is for the benefit of your buyer. And for that reason, your win rate goes through the roof, and your ability to monitor the deals and track it, because it's buyer led, is way more accurate.
There we go. So thank you everyone for turning up today. We're Joint Flows. We care passionately about this. Please do spread the word. And yeah, thank you for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate you being with us. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.